What if I came if we can just ask you to stand out of the hallway, we can pass you a drink here. So if you could stand out here, we're gonna translate, we're gonna jump over here.
Can you open this door too?
The only problem is it might create twice that. What is yeah.
Okay, so I wonder, Mayor's gonna say something. I don't know what it is.
Is Councillor Thompson online? Can you just see?
No.
No, she's not. Oh,
I call this regular meeting of the Town of Gibsons Council to order on June 3rd, 2025 at 3:30, and we're honored to be gathered here on the traditional territories of the Skohomish Nation. First, we need to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor DeAndrade. All those in favor? The motion carries, and we have minutes to adopt from May 27th, 2025, special council meeting moved by Councillor DeAndrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? The motion carries. And next we have a notice of motion. I think the point was more to refer the motion that was on the agenda, but yeah, we can do that now. So this is the motion regarding 5.1.3, zoning amendment for place of worship to be postponed to allow time for further council consideration of the time the applicant has occupied the property under nonconformance, expectations of exit plans for the applicant from 287 Gower Point Road, past, present, and future, potential plans to modify commercial zoning in the zoning bylaw update, provincial restrictions around municipal ability to grant temporary use permits or temporary site-specific zoning amendments, taxation ramifications of directly zoning designating a place of worship, past zoning of the unit, and securing a 24-hour parking commitment from the property owner to support flexibility in Lower Gibson's commercial zoning, supporting residents and visitors. So that's the motion I'm making to refer. I see a seconder, Councillor Kroll. And just to speak to it, I think it speaks for itself. It's very detailed about all the considerations I think we need to make. I've encouraged councillors to add anything if you think there's anything else we need to consider. Yeah, one piece I just really want to make clear about working with the property owner, because, and this is due to, we've received a lot of feedback about this, and I think there is some misunderstanding about the decision of zoning something, rezoning something long-term, and that is that it's really the primary partner that the town needs to work with is the property owner when we're looking at long-term zoning and the future. The long-term zoning is largely something for the future. I know that the church has looked at temporary use permits, and that's more, you kind of look at what the use is going to be for that 3 years and expectation that there might be a lease of that time. But when it comes to looking long-term and looking for long-term planning of the town, what we really need to do is look at the land use and consider that anybody could be renting that space or leasing that space. So that's what, I mean, we've received some feedback saying, what does the property owner have to do with it? Well, the property owner actually has a lot to do with it, whether it's the property owner now or in the future. It's really a modification of zoning for that property and the property owner and flexibility for that. So I just wanted to make that clarification that I know council all understands, because that was behind our committee of the whole recommendation. And I'll see if does anyone else want to add anything or speak to that? Yeah, I mean, I do, with that recognition, I think people will also hear in those points that we want to consider some special considerations for this situation where a temporary use permit ran out, and then there's just been this space in between, which I think we need to explore the ramifications of that and really consider that it's an unusual situation. It's a very unusual situation, but it certainly can't be a case where we just suddenly go, okay, now we're going to reconsider this, and the current use has to end tomorrow, and you're out. Like that's not a reasonable thing for any local government to do. We understand that, so we do need to work with the current lessees, tenants in that regard. We understand that. I see Councillor Lumley.
Thank you. To the mayor. So just as a point of process, you're referring the decision that was made by council in committee of the whole, or does that now fall off the board? I'm just asking.
It's a recommendation of committee of the whole, so it's something that
Continues to live?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's we're referring the motion, yeah.
Okay, and then I could be completely wrong, but it seems that, reading some of the communication and so on and so forth, it seems like there's a bit of confusion to the fact that there's operating a church, Christ is King, which I don't think anybody has a problem with, and rezoning the property. They're two completely separate, different things. And for what I remember from committee of the whole was that, the council was kind of putting it back to staff or re-engaging with staff, saying, how can we make this work without rezoning? That was my understanding of the committee of the whole. So I don't know if that's still the path we're taking, or is it still on the will this come back, Mayor? Will this come back and we have to re-vote again on the rezoning? Or are we going to try and attempt to help the church stay where it is without rezoning? That was my question.
I think, the latter is probably what is something that can be considered through this postponement. But to be clear, the recommendation that committee passed was that the application be denied and the file closed. That's on the agenda here. So there was no recommendation at committee for staff to look at it. That's why we're doing this now.
Okay,
That's why we've got these points for staff
thank
to
you.
look
Yep,
at, for us
because
to look at.
I did email with a suggestion as an opportunity for the church to, just ideas, we might have to think outside the box instead of being so rigid by bureaucracy.
Yeah, and I also want to thank the pastor of the church for reaching out to meet with me last week, and we had a good opening discussion, just talking about the history and how we got to this place, this unusual place. It's a challenge for the congregation and a challenge for council as well. And I think it definitely makes sense for us to look at this further and work with the church and the property owner, rather than just have this kind of binary decision of yes or no, which is what we had to make a decision on last meeting. So we're moving in a more constructive direction, as you suggest, Councillor Lumley. I saw another hand over here. Was it both? Yeah. Okay, Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is a good opportunity to also address, I saw many letters that talk about discrimination or violation of religious freedoms. from my point of view, and I believe from the point of view of council, this is nothing about discrimination. This is nothing about this church. It's the responsibility, as the mayor said, for long-term planning. And this is on us. Unfortunately, council has to deal with decisions that we have to look at the implications of the entire community. One of the things that we all are aware, it's affordable housing. We have been working really hard to address affordable housing. And one of the things to support affordable housing, it's trying to not exempt taxes, for example, property taxes from affordable housing, so the society can maintain. We cannot do this because if we don't have a good tax base, and that's where we are looking at. We have to look at all the issues involved in the community. This is not about a group of religious people, a specific church. That has nothing to do. So thanks, Councilor Lumley, for addressing that. And I appreciate, Mayor, one of the first questions that I asked was, is it possible to give a temporary use permit? Unfortunately, according to the provincial law, staff said no, and that's the decision. But in any moment, nobody is thinking that we're going, okay, you have 1 month to leave. Not at all. You guys have been there forever, since 2007. It's just a question of giving the change in the zoning, and that has a lot of implications. So I apologize if someone understood like that is discriminatory behavior. It has nothing to do. So that's what I would like to clarify, Mayor. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to respond to that quickly and then go to Councillor Kroll. I mean, I will say I've got a bit of a different take on that. I mean, it's something that we'll look into as the taxation implications. I don't think that the taxation implications for the town as a whole would be significant in any way, personally. I mean, if the assessment changed because of the rezoning, I think it would be negligible, personally. But that's something that we could we'll look into further. Yeah, I mean, another point I was going to make about that, yeah, that you raised, Councillor DeAndrade, is, I mean, yeah, I think that if this was a temporary use permit, another temporary use permit, considering the community contribution of the church and there is a very strong argument that was already laid out before council for this fitting in. On a temporary basis, again, as previous councils have supported, we would have supported that 100%. But we're restrained by provincial law here, and that's why one of our points is to look into that piece as well, as see if there's a way, especially after there's been this time elapsed between the last temporary use permit and now, that we can look into other options here. All right, go to Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White, and through you. You know, it was awkward because we were sort of faced with an either-or decision. I think you clearly outlined the route we're going to pursue. And, you know, when we made the decision, because when we were faced with making the motion, I moved the option we went with, but followed it with not having any objection for the church to continue operating within that space. So I think the route we're now going with looking for options that would facilitate their continued success in that space, you know, is great. So the motion that you brought forward has been seconded, and I'll leave it with you, sir.
Yeah, continued success, but I mean, I also think, you know, I think some of the correspondence we've received, but also this is something I should acknowledge that this whole congregation knows, though the council didn't know because it wasn't in the report, is that the church does still have plans to move. And this is something the pastor confirmed to me. So having a temporary approval still makes some sense and is still agreeable to the church as long as we can find a way to do that. So that's an important point. Yeah. So seeing no other consideration, and that's the continued success is also means supporting the next step for the church, big step which I know is going to require a lot of fundraising and construction costs and all the stuff that we have to be concerned about all the time. Yeah, Councillor Kroll?
Just to follow up to that, because faced with construction costs, we have been working with Cover the Coast, and there are some really good avenues and funding opportunities open, working with partners in the community to incorporate things like daycare into the space. It opens all sorts of opportunities for additional funding, as is the case with Phase 2 on, well, we say Shaw Road, but it's actually O'Shea for the affordable housing. So, Kelly Foley is more than.
Yeah, they're aware of that. Yeah, they're definitely aware of that. I know the church has engaged an architect already who's been looking at a lot of various options with me, as my understanding, or with the church, I understand. So, yeah. So that's a great. They're already moving forward in those steps. So the motion, which is 4.1, to be for this item to be postponed to allow time for all these considerations that I listed off. We'll have the vote now. All those in favor? The motion carries. So we'll be we'll be in touch with you certainly on some of these items, because they're discussions with the church, and then some discussions with the property owner as well are necessary, and then there's going to be a discussion with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs too, I think, about their law on temporary use permits, and seeing what we can do about that. Okay, thank you for attending.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so the other committee of the whole recommendation, since we dealt with that one already, we've got a aquifer protection regulation update, and that's one that we're well aware of, that bylaw be referred for a legal and technical review and brought back to council. Moved by Councillor D'Andrade, seconded by Councillor Lumley. All those in favor? The motion carries. And then zoning amendment to allow arcades, and that's to be directed to send notifications and retroactively. This I won't maybe officially add that word, but this has already happened, and councils did honor our recommendation to do this. They understood our strong support for this item, so we're already going to be looking at the zoning amendment bylaw next. But it's up to council. We could pass this anyway. Should we pass it anyway to cover it off? Sure, yeah. Okay, Councillor D'Andrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? So that's what we send out notifications last week. And now here it is already. Wow, well, that's fast. Yeah. Notifications have got out. Staff acts very quickly on our direction. And this can actually go to third reading. So it's at least first reading, but we can, I think this is something we're supportive of. So that's moving first, second, and third reading by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor D'Andrade. All those in favor? That carries. And now the amendment to allow arcades, now it needs to go to the Ministry of Transportation, I was just reminded of. So I've got to make a comment that, like, we keep seeing and all the stuff of Bill 15 and both from the federal and provincial government, that we need to cut our red tape, and really, municipal processes take too long. Here's a situation where we've got a bylaw just to allow arcades in town, and for some reason the Ministry of Transportation needs to delay it in order to comment on it. Like, I I can't imagine anyone in this room can understand the relevance of that, but frankly, the provincial government hypocritically sees the relevance of that at the same time as saying that it's municipal governments that are causing delays. So I've brought this up before to them, and really wish they'd just roll back their insistence on needing to approve everything from Ministry of Transportation and give us some confidence and autonomy. Now let's go to the Natural Asset Technicians report, which is another really big step following up on our last meeting, the Committee of the Whole meeting, and this is the draft Urban Forest Plan. And our Natural Asset Technician has a presentation to start it off. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if we could pull the panelist over,
The panelist is not in the Zoom meeting.
is not in the meeting?
All right, let's go to boundary extension, alternative approval process. This was a later item, I think, that came through yesterday. Is that right? Yeah. But as expected, the town has obtained consent from the electors to move ahead with the boundary expansion, and that motion wording is in 6.2. And if anyone has any questions, Tracy's not here, but I think, yeah, Rebecca can answer. Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I was really fond of that and happy, and then I realized the census. Is it going to come before the census? Because if this gets before the census, it might be, I'm just,
This is like,
I'm just talking about population because
Well-
according to our growth, we may not reach the 5,000.
most of these
But-
lots are vacant.
I know, but
And I mean, if you're betting on 499,999, like, yeah, and the 1 or 2 is going to put us over, I mean, yeah, no, I don't think could happen, but I think it's just as likely as any other little thing that could happen. Councillor Kroll.
I would like to move the recommendations. Now, it's and that, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes, yeah,
Just going to include all of them in one fell swoop.
yeah, that's what, it's all the lots together are all in this
So
recommendation.
moving the
yeah.
recommendations on
Great.
page, in the agenda under 6.2.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Lumley. Any discussion? All those in favor? The motion carries. And let's go to 6.3, janitorial services at town facilities. And our CAO is taking, I was bugging him earlier. Is he going to take on the janitorial services himself and put on his high vis? Because he has a tendency to get his hands dirty, we've all seen. But it looks like he's recommending that someone else do it, so
Yeah.
maybe because he's going on holiday. Yeah.
Tried to fit it in, Mr. Mayor, just wasn't enough time of the day. But, we're all hands on deck, as we say. We're, if I may, Mr. Mayor, we're seeking request from council to award a contract for janitorial services at our various facilities. It's been a few years since we had a request for proposals like this, but with the addition and the changes that we've had in facilities, it felt appropriate to retender. We've actually received 3 bids, but 1 bid was non-compliant. But the other 2 bids were, they're very reasonable, and the fellows did come through, do the tour, and were satisfied that either one of them could have done the job. So our recommendation is that council consider awarding the contract to Mastercare for a price of $62,770.92 a year.
I see that moved already. There's no questions. I'm like, yeah. Moved by Councillor Andrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. Any discussion? All those in favor? The motion carries. Okay, let's just, may as well just keep going through to Sophie here, and then we'll get to it at the end. So, I mean, the statement of financial information, we get it every year, so I don't imagine there's any introduction to it. Are there any questions about it? Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you. I have two questions. I was just curious with also on electric expanding developments expenses, if this is related to the update that we had with our buildings here? And my other question was regarding urban systems, if, because there's $1.2 million on contracts, and whether urban systems go through any bidding process with all these contracts. Just curiosity as well, trying to understand the process.
Oh, probably varies on urban systems, but I'll go to the Director of Infrastructure Services.
Yes, thank you. So through the mayor, I can answer the second question. The contracts to urban systems, there's various mechanisms with which we've gone through recruitment to get, or procurement to get urban systems on board. So some have been through an RFP, some of the work is covered through an ongoing services contract that was issued through an RFP a number of years ago. And so it depends on the project, but in general, there was some procurement process that would have engaged with them.
Okay, and we may need to get back to you on the Spini. Yeah, maybe you could detail where you're looking at.
Well, it's just the expense. I was just curious if, or if this is related to construction of this, or there's another related. Just want to be aware.
Yeah, there could be a couple things.
Just generally speaking.
From Spini?
Spani and also, because it's kind of 200,000 close, both of them. I was just trying to understand.
To you, Mr. Mayor. So with Spani, we had a contract for the visitor deck, information center deck.
Thank you.
Sorry, the other one?
Also,
Olson they are our ongoing electrical contractors, and sometimes they are part of contracts as well, so probably a combination of ongoing work. But we do tender that out for different services every few years.
infrastructure, okay.
They're probably,
Thank you.
is that fair, Trevor? Or?
Yeah, through the mayor, confirming that the CAO, I believe there, again, a number of years ago, there would have been a contract for, or an RFP for ongoing electrical services that would have been awarded. So some of that work would be covered by that. Some of it would have been project-specific work that they would have performed, maybe related to installing some AC units or something that we would have done through a capital program. So there's a combination of how that would have been procured.
Thank you.
And there's, yeah, we haven't put forward the recommendation, right? Yeah, okay, moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor D'Andrade. All those in favor? The motion carries. And let's go back to natural assets technician now. So that's back to item 6.1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's going to be a presentation by Diamond Head Consulting. So I believe Matt Shields is on the call now. And I'll just introduce it by just pointing out one thing in the staff report, that the next steps and one of the recommendations would be for endorsement of the plan with the condition that staff will bring forward an implementation plan because of budget considerations with the recommendations. So with that, I'll pass it over to Matt from Diamond Head.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Mayor and Council. It's nice to be here to present with you finally. Sorry about those technical issues. I'm just going to throw out my presentation slides on the shared screen here, and we'll be on our way. Are folks in the room able to see that?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so thanks for the introduction, Michelle. I am Matt Shields. I have been working with Michelle and the rest of the Parks team at the town of Gibsons on the Urban Forest Plan project. I'm a registered professional forester working for Diamond Head Consulting, where I'm also an ISA certified arborist. We have quite the presentation today to get through, and I know we have fairly limited time, so I'll probably be breezing through these slides at quite a pace. But I do encourage and hope that there are questions at the end of the presentation. If there's anything that you would like additional information on, I'm happy to speak to it. So I do want to acknowledge that, of course, this project in the town of Gibsons is located on the unceded territory of the Squamish-Umi. We have tried to represent that acknowledgement throughout our work on the urban forest plan, recognizing that there is, of course, much more work to do on relationship building, especially within the realm of land management. So a little agenda for the presentation is I'll start with giving you a brief overview of the project before we move into some findings about the urban forest, which we call the state of section. I'll review the engagement findings, the engagement process, of course, supporting the plan in 2 phases, before we move on to a brief summary of the key elements of the final urban forest plan draft that's been attached to the agenda today. So let's talk a little bit about the background to this project. So first, we have to define some terms and understand what even is the urban forest in Gibsons. And, you know, as professionals working in this space, you know, we understand the urban forest as essentially every tree within the municipal boundary of the town. And the reason for that is because those are the trees through which, you know, the town's powers under the Local Government Act and Community Charter can be used to influence outcomes. So those trees occur in natural areas, on rural properties, you know, in downtown streets and parking lots, along riparian areas and streams. They shade our homes and backyards, and are found as well in unique environmental areas like bluffs up at Gospel Rock or on the seashore. And why is the urban forest of particular interest? Well, having tree cover and trees in urban areas results in the provision of many benefits which are valuable to people and the environment. And just briefly, some of those benefits include providing habitat for wildlife, so ensuring that our community continues to support local biodiversity, but also, you know, important benefits for human health and well-being as well, like cooling effects related to the urban heat island and protection or prevention of damage from excessive stormwater runoff. The urban forest, of course, playing a role in sort of supporting engineered assets and services, a tradition in which Gibsons is well versed with its work on natural asset management. So why do we need the plan? Well, you know, trees in cities, they do face several challenges, and also it does take resources to keep them in a state of good condition throughout their life cycle. So of course, that life cycle and life expectancy for an individual tree will vary on its planting site, its species, other environmental conditions, as well as you know, what changes are going on in the urban landscape around it. But this conceptual diagram sort of represents you know, the theory behind urban forest planning, which is that yes, we spend a little bit of money to get trees in the ground and send them on their way growing, and then when they reach a state of semi-maturity through the mature portion of their life, they are providing a number of benefits to our community, which some of which can be given actual monetary value, and others which are intangible. Before, of course, towards the end of their life, they require more care, and thus are associated again with increased cost of management. So urban forest planning is about giving the town the strategies that it needs to try to maximize the amount of time that its tree assets spend in that condition of healthy maturity, where they are benefiting the community at a relatively low cost. So just a brief slide on the components of the plan. It includes a vision statement, which sets sort of something to achieve by 2045, and that vision was crafted in response to the community engagement, of course. And supporting that vision underneath it are a series of goals, strategies, and actions. There are 4 goals, which I'll have more to say about later in the presentation. And to help guide implementation, there are also recommended targets and priorities, which complements the rest of the action plan. So the goal of this plan is to set a direction And then, of course, as Michelle has said, there will be work to do to plot out the actual implementation. But our goal with this project was to give the town the resources it needs to really wrestle with some of those challenges and decisions about implementation priorities. So, of course, the project began back at the end of the year in 2023. The two phases of engagement, the first supporting development of the vision and values of the plan, occurred in the winter of 2024, while plan drafting took most of the past year. The draft plan was prepared by the end of the year and was submitted for a feedback opportunity with the public in winter this year. And now here we are presenting the final draft to Mayor and Council. So moving into the state of, so canopy cover mapping is a key component of the urban forest plan. Canopy cover, if you are unfamiliar, is simply a metric to assess the quantity and extent of the urban forest. And what it is simply the area occupied by tree crowns when viewed from above. So within the municipal boundary of the town of Gibsons, based on 2020 data, which was the most recent year for which we had suitable LiDAR and aerial imagery information, canopy cover was 38% or 168 hectares, of tree canopy within the town's total area of 438 hectares in that year. So what are those trees doing? Well, here are some of the things that they're doing. You can see that they are having a notable impact on detectable land surface temperatures. So this map on the left is showing you how areas where heat detected during the peak of the heat dome in 2021 are associated with areas of low tree cover. Well, of course, the highly forested areas around Sharman Creek and other parts of the community have much lower detected surface temperatures during that heat dome. And of course, there are community health implications to this. The map on the right is a complement there to help you visualize sort of which areas of the community have the highest proportion of canopy cover, relatively speaking, because many parts of the community have over that town boundary average of 38%. You know, some areas in natural areas might have close to 90 or even higher than that, while lots of areas also have much less. Further to that point, we can kind of split up the canopy analysis to give you a bit of information about, maybe which areas in the town specifically have less tree cover and thus might be a focus for future investment in the urban forest. They include the areas that you might expect, which are generally older residential neighborhoods, as well as areas with mixed commercial land use, both around the downtown core, as well as in the Upper Gibsons commercial area. Another way that we look at this is, the urban forest plan is alive to the implementation tools that it is helping to bring about. And so what's key to that is understanding, where can we apply those tools? So different tools for different ownerships of land. Obviously, the town doesn't directly manage every tree in the municipality, even though every tree in the municipality does contribute to the urban forest. So understanding where trees occur in terms of ownership is important. And the key thing to pull out from this slide is just recognizing that the vast majority of the tree cover in the town is located on private property, with smaller proportions being located on lands directly managed by the town. Okay, so I'll tell you a bit about the engagement process here. So as I mentioned, phase one engagement was intended to gather community input to inform the development of the urban forest vision and supporting goals. Phase one engagement looked like a survey to which we received 184 responses. As well, there was an online public open house with a presentation and then an opportunity for question and answer, at which there were 40 virtual attendees. So information from both those opportunities was considered during the development of the urban forest plan. And then, as I mentioned, phase two engagement involved publishing a draft version of the urban forest plan on the town's website and inviting people to complete a feedback form or another short survey to let us know what they thought about some of its key provisions. So, some of that feedback coming from phase two engagement. So feedback on the vision. The vision for the document, or for the urban forest rather, is that Gibsons Urban Forest contributes to our town's identity, livability, and natural environment. The urban forest is diverse, healthy, resilient, accessible, and valued wherever trees grow. It is connected via parks, tree-lined streets, yard trees, and natural forests, ensuring a future that is resilient to climate change. And so in the deeper green there, you can see 30% of respondents to the Phase 2 survey strongly agreed with that statement as representing their vision for the urban forest in Gibsons. 40% agreed somewhat, and the remaining respondents either somewhat or strongly disagreed, and 11% of respondents neither agreed nor disagreed, indicating uncertainty about how they felt about the vision statement. So supporting the plan, and we'll have a little bit more to say about this when we get to the goals, strategies, and actions, but key to understand here is that we did directly ask through the Phase 2 online feedback form what people thought about some of the plan provisions that would be required to meet the canopy cover target, which I'll talk about shortly. Those actions include planting an additional 1,000 trees in parks by 2045, as well as an additional 1,200 trees along streets in the public realm by 2045, restoring 2 hectares of forests, and securing 500 additional trees on private property in people's yards through some version of a community tree program, which would take likely the form of a subsidized tree sale. And to that, those planting initiatives, there was a fairly substantial support. So you can see 83% of people provided a yes answer when they were asked whether they supported those planting initiatives. So we did also ask about quick start actions. I think in the interest of time, I will move on to discuss some of those quick start actions in their place in the action slides, but this information is available in the engagement summaries, and we can return to this during questions if there's interest. But essentially, the action plan for the urban forest plan document is centered around this structure. So 4 high-level goals, 10 strategies supported by 48 actions, which are detailing what needs to be done or could be done. Of those 48 actions, 10 were identified as so-called quick starts. So quick start actions were intended to be actions that are relatively, you might think of them as low-hanging fruit. So things that should be done either to secure a pathway towards future implementation, or things that could be done within current resourcing. So in addition to that structure, we have our canopy cover targets. So it's key to understand that the impacts of development expected in the community under current OCP land uses on urban forest canopy in areas that are currently rural land were significant when we were developing canopy targets for this plan. And so the approach has been to separate out greenfield areas, or those areas where current land use could change or is expected to change over the life of the plan due to residential development or mixed-use development, with contrast those areas with urban areas. So you can see those in green and yellow on the map. And so by 2045, the plan sets out a pathway to achieve an urban canopy cover target of 31%, which would be an increase over the canopy that was found in that area in 2020. And correspondingly, a greenfield canopy cover target of 39%. And 39% is significantly lower than the current canopy on those sites. However, it still represents what canopy could look like in 20 years if implementation to secure suitable planting spaces for trees, tree protection measures, and additional planting were able to take place above sort of what would occur under the status quo. So those goals, I mentioned the 4 goals. They are to protect and grow the urban forest in alignment with community priorities, steward the urban forest aligned with Gibson's leadership in asset management, partner to increase awareness and capacity, and monitor progress and manage adaptively. On the following slides here, I'll just go through a couple of the key actions and pull them out for you related to each of these goals. I unfortunately don't have the ability, I think, to go through each of them in detail. Each of the goals in detail, but here you can see, so goal 1, protecting and growing the urban forest in alignment with community priorities. This is all about aligning the urban forest plan and the vision of the urban forest, the canopy cover targets, with the policy tools that Gibsons can use or does use to influence the cover of trees on both private and public property. And so quick start actions under this item include amending the OCP to increase representation of urban forest value, as well as include some of those developed canopy cover targets, updating the tree preservation bylaw to make housekeeping amendments, as well as introducing an approach to better regulate trees on some of those greenfield properties where we are expecting the greatest losses to occur. Exploring that community tree program, which is needed to deliver those 500 trees on private property, and updating the zoning bylaw to ensure that suitable planting sites for trees are created even as the city or adds needed housing stock. So despite residential intensification, looking at some of these development-related bylaws is a key measure in any urban forest plan to look for those opportunities where soil volumes can be preserved or regulations can be tweaked to ensure that trees have a place in the town's future, as well as new housing. Under goal 2, we have just one quick start there, which was to map vacant planting locations. So the idea there being that in order to get a good start on planting some of those numbers in terms of the tree planting targets, that the town will need to make investments aligned with its priorities and asset management for understanding where trees are currently located and where planting opportunities exist. This is intended to identify sites and streets in particular, but could also be used to identify planting sites in parks. Under goal number 3, the quick start action here was to engage the Squamish Nation to better understand their priorities for urban forest management. So as I said on the top, we do recognize that whenever land management takes place, there is a need to engage Indigenous peoples on whose the town's territory is located. And then under goal 4, we had 3 more quick start actions. So these are related to sort of stewarding the program over the long term and ensuring that it continues to provide useful information to the town and its decision making. So these include evaluating the urban forest program and tracking progress using an annual report card, which could also be a good interface or communications tool with the public. Ensuring that new plantings in streets and parks reflect the species diversity guidance, which is referred to in the plan, and not least, exploring acquiring external funds through programs such as the Greening Canada's Community Canopies program, GCCC, to leverage capital budgets, much like the capital budget was leveraged to support this plan, which was funded through grants. So I did speak to those quick start actions there, but they're pulled up for you there again. And I guess with that, I'll be happy to take your questions, and I would love to have some discussion on this item. Thank you.
Great, thank you for the presentation and the very informative report. And I mean, all the work, especially including to on the public engagement on the final report. I will look to council for questions, and I see, as expected, Councillor DeAndrade has some questions.
Thank you.
Questions for us all sometimes.
My first question regards the scenarios, because my understanding is the recommendation is for scenario 3. Mm-hmm. And the difference between scenario 2 and 3 is actually on the policy of the 50 trees per hectare. But in the presentation right now, my understanding was the 50 trees per hectare is just for the green field. Okay, maybe Michelle is saying no, so maybe I just misunderstood.
We're going to go to just internally here, their natural asset technician to answer this first.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the 50 trees per hectare would be a town-wide target.
Okay, Councillor Kroll.
First of all, thank you for Mayor White, thank you for the presentation, and I totally applaud the amount of work that's gone into this and the information that's included and, you know, the points that are covered. One of the things, and this I'm going to put in sort of quotation marks, street trees, because it's something I applaud. Being a person who grew up in southern Ontario and lived in communities where you have these gorgeous tree-lined streets that, you know, in the summer it's just corridors of cool. One of the problems we seem to have here is that we're continually planting trees that disturb infrastructure like sidewalks and curbs and roads. And I didn't see a lot in the report, and I think perhaps the natural asset technician alluded to it with the comment budget implications. Because a few years ago at council, we had a really great report on planting community street trees that didn't destroy the infrastructure, that had methods of rainwater capture, so they, we weren't pouring thousands of gallons of water on them to keep them alive. So I would, certainly be interested in seeing and hearing more about how we're going to ensure that we can plant and maintain street trees.
Matt, you okay if I take this one?
Sure, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's a couple of the actions in there. One of them would be to look at the zoning bylaw to make sure there's, and I might be getting that bylaw wrong, but looking at bylaws to ensure that there's sufficient planting space for developments. The other would be to look at the subdivision and development servicing bylaw to look at soil volumes and sidewalk details, which would be in staff's work plan.
This is a direct follow-up, Councillor Kroll?
The reason I know this is going to be sort of integrated into the OCP, but I think it's really something that we need to look at because in so many areas of the community, between road allowances and what we want to put in for sidewalks and what we want for all access routes, the one thing that tends to be suffering in the mix is trees. And I think we seriously need to have a look at coming up with a better balance for tree survival.
Okay. I will go to our Director of Infrastructure Services on this.
Thanks. So through the mayor, it's a great point. And that's something that certainly we within the department have kind of grappled with when we think about trying to implement this between the urban forest plan, the active transportation plan, which we received last year, and the parking strategy, which is underway, which will certainly identify the need for more street parking as we look at the higher density residential, like 4-unit per parcel type developments where maybe one of the accommodations is needing more street parking. There's a lot of competing priorities within the limited space that we have for our road corridors. And that'll certainly be part of the exercise that we have to undertake in reviewing this, the parking strategy, the ATMP townwide, in terms of what can we fit within these corridors, and maybe there needs to be some prioritization of 2 of the 3 in various streets or neighborhoods, depending on the road type and what the recommendations are. So there's a lot of work that'll still have to come to figure out the best way for us to be able to implement this so that we can meet the competing needs.
We are going to have a question. Okay, Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, and it might have something to do with Councillor Kroll's. And I was just wondering, it's an extensive report, clearly, and not being a planner or somebody that's engaged in forestry, I may have missed, but it was important, I think, at one point, even when the supportive housing went in, it was about trees that are existing. And like when developers, and I know it said in here to work with developers, but I almost think that if the town had more teeth to take up, like maintaining current, the trees, because they wanted to cut those trees down that line, O'Shea, right? Yeah, they wanted to cut all those big trees down that lined O'Shea, and they said, well, they're not going to survive the construction. So, but the council of the day insisted that they remain. And I just wonder if something in this report could be, through the mayor, if something in this, or if we do have the teeth, or if we can have the teeth to direct for the existing trees, because you know, I remember when I first moved up here, and I know they developed that area. I know it's not in Gibsons, but when they developed atop of Grantham's there, and they just cut like every tree down without even thinking about it. And my question was, why'd you do that? And it was the developers just said, well, they're just alders, they're crappy trees, whatever it is. But I just wondered if there's some way we could have more, you know, the town could have a heavier hand with developers and keeping existing trees and planting of new trees.
Okay, that's a good question that there are a number of people here who could answer, but I just want to, I wasn't on council last term, but I remember that the issue with School Road, School Road a little differently. I thought that there was also a second arborist report that was asked for. There was a second opinion. It wasn't just that council just decided to ignore the arborist report. It was council actually asked for a second opinion that said that, and I think that was from Mr. Mills, the local. Right. But anyway, we don't need to go over history too much. I just wanted to point that out. It seems like I'm right on that. So let's go to who wants to answer?
I'll just follow up with you. It's the implication isn't of what happened, but the fact that most developers, when they come in, they just want to cut the trees down. So I was just thinking, you know, how can we? It doesn't even have to get to an arborist report. You go,
okay. I thought there was one. There was another one, but
There
I guess
was,
we
but-
are going to have to go over history because let's not. Yeah, we're not the authorities up here. Staff will tell us what happened. I'll go to our
Mr.
natural
Mayor.
asset technician who will remember better than us.
Those trees are on town land. That's one of the differences, is because it's within the road allowance. So it wasn't on private property, which is a distinction, because they were zoned to develop however they were going to develop. And yes, the removals, they applied for removals to be able to get the trailers in for access to the site, but the town hired an independent arborist and was able to save the trees.
Okay, then there was a really big picture question there about this in general, and I think our Director of Infrastructure Services is ready to answer that.
Thank you. Through the mayor, so I believe there's a recommendation in the report to review the tree protection bylaw. And would be likely the best mechanism that the town could use to try to preserve trees on private property from. Currently, it's if there's a need to remove trees to support a development or building permit, that kind of gives the justification for approving that. We could look at maybe trying to put a little bit of tighter restrictions around what types of trees, or encouraging development to shift the building footprints to preserve if there's trees that are identified as having particular values. So I think the tree preservation bylaw would be the best mechanism for that.
Follow up, Councillor Lumley?
yeah, and I used the supportive housing instead of Gospel Rock, just because I didn't want to go too crazy.
Okay. Go back and forth here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the last thing I'll say on this point is, for protection too, there's an action in the plan to update the delegation bylaw to allow for minor variances to things like parking regulations or setbacks or planning things that to allow retention of mature trees or trees that are existing.
Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to speak to the staff report flags that all the recommendations and so on, the implementation of this be pushed forward and sorted out. And of course, as the last discussion here flags, there's a lot of complexity very quickly on some parts of it. But I just wanted to flag for council Roman numeral 6 of this report refers to essentially 2,200 trees being planted over 20 years. So that's 110 trees a year. Pretty good trees in a nursery getting up to the fruit tree grade are about $200 a tree. So that's $22,000 a year. BC Hydro is anxious for every local government in the province to apply and receive their $10,000 greening grant. So there's half the money. And the parks budget itself right now up over 3 or 4 categories, 2 of which involve trees, invasive species, and trails. Almost certainly near the end of every year, we'll have about $10,000 unspent, which could be used to buy for delivery the following year. So I just wanted to flag for council that as far as whenever the details of implementation settle down, a lot of the money that's needed from the town side, we actually already have in our existing means. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, yeah, I always see that BC Hydro campaign or opportunity come around. I think the Green Municipal Fund also has a program too, which I was just exposed to them heavily in Ottawa because they're connected to FCM. Before I go to Councillor Kroll, I just want to check in with Matt. Our staff has been very capably answering all the questions, multiple members, but did you have anything to add to?
Indeed, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
It's a little hard to break in sometimes when you're the one out in the Zoom room, but no. So I did want to echo just on that last point there, made by the Director of Finance and yourself. So I briefly mentioned it in the presentation, but the GCCC, so Greening Canada's Community Canopies, that is the program that you were likely becoming familiar with during your time in Ottawa under the Green Municipal Fund. And it is not the only, but it is one of the major opportunities currently available to municipalities who are looking for money to support both tree planting and now through an expected second intake to that program to even support operational or strategic, what they call structural projects. So it could even be possible to get money through such a program on a cost share basis to do things like get an inventory of these planting sites, which was one of the quick start actions, or many other projects, reviewing bylaws, aligning with other plans. So the scope of that funding has increased for the upcoming program intake. So that's a good one, definitely to check out. But yes, for the time being, there do seem to be many opportunities available to offset the cost, capital costs in particular, of investment in the urban forest. With regards to some of the other points, I don't need to repeat what the Director of Infrastructure and the Natural Asset Technician have pointed out. But I do want to highlight that things like looking at amendments to bylaws to create, a minor variance, that is a concrete example of a tool that many municipalities use to give themselves the ability, a point in the development process where they can, try to steer outcomes in a different direction, by creating those opportunities during development review. So the report does contain many other actions which were mentioned, but some of that implementation detail, like the ideas are on the table, and now it's time for a bit more discussion, I guess, is all I wanted to contribute to the table here.
Thank you. And I'm going to Councillor Kroll next, I think, and then Councillor DeAndretti's got her hand up too.
Thank you, Mayor White. Just a couple of things. One of the big problems we've got are road allowances that, sort of compete with property lines and sidewalks and one thing and another. Have we considered possibly going to some one-way streets that would facilitate a narrower road allowance per se, but would allow for sidewalks and street trees? And the other thing is, it's the whole issue of planting a tree. So often, and I will admit I am very guilty of it, is, a tree, bung it in the ground. And the next thing, I'm applying for a tree cutting permit because the tree's grown up into the power lines and it's been choked out by a lilac, and the tree is now leaning precariously towards the house. So do we have the capacity or a sort of a toolkit that these are trees that you should consider planting in your yard, one, and this is the footprint that that little sucker is going to require once you bung it in the ground of, ultimately the footprint it's going to take up in 20 years or whatever.
I know Councillor Thompson's got some recent experience in that too. Maybe it's in North Fletcher Road challenge. Director of Infrastructure.
Thanks to the mayor. I can answer the first question. We have not considered changing road patterns to accommodate tree planting. That's certainly something that would be within scope for the transportation master plan in terms of the road network. If there's interest from council, that's certainly something that could get passed on once that sets in motion.
Is this, okay, a follow-up? Yeah.
Just to follow up to that, I would suggest, you may be familiar with it, but Galt in Cambridge, Ontario, it's an older community, and they were dealing with narrow road allowances, and what they did is they went to a network of one-way streets to support maintaining their trees, because the alternative was widening the streets and losing the trees, and the uproar, people were much happier having the one-way streets. So if you look at things like Brant Street, Lansdowne in Galt, Ontario, even if you just look at it on Google Earth, they're beautiful streets with street lamps and gorgeous trees.
Okay, I think we've got Councillor Giandratti now.
Thank you, Mayor. Page 22 talks about heritage and significant trees, and our bylaw talks about that as well, protecting. But the bylaw, when they describe what heritage trees are, they talk about trees that have been determined by council to be a significant value to the community. So my question is, do we have any list of heritage? So, and if we don't, is that part of the work, going over weather lidar and determining what is heritage? Okay.
Through Mr. Mayor, I would see that as something that if council wanted to direct staff to put together a list, or if there's trees that council determines are heritage trees. I know that there's the heritage inventory that has some significant trees on there. There's a cedar tree down in Weingarten, and there's some other trees. So that would be a council decision of determining heritage trees. So there currently is no list.
Okay.
May I speak to the councillor's question through the mayor?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add there that the plan does support sort of what the natural asset technician is talking about in the future, with a recommendation to begin developing a formal tree inventory. And what many communities would do is they would, in addition to having the council nomination process for heritage trees, which many communities do maintain, they'll have a list in their tree bylaw of special or significant trees that have been determined by council to be deserving of protection. Many communities will also have a provision in their tree bylaw that talks about the criteria which define a significant tree, whether it be size, uniqueness of species, or things of that nature. And so in the future, something that could be considered or explored is the idea of whether a criteria-based definition would be helpful, because it would no longer put the burden on council to identify all of these trees in a specific list.
Thank you. Louise, did you happen to have any questions? I saw you taking a note, but maybe you were just taking a note for your own, something later. So I think, Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you, Mayor. This regards invasive species. Obviously, the plan acknowledged the impact of invasive species. And then there's as a short-term action is to remove invasive species from park and trails. But then the implementation of the integrated management plan is down the line. And council was about to approve a species, invasive species by law. So I was just wondering, I'm just afraid because the mid-term action can take 5 years, and 5 years could be a lot. You know, when I look at the town full of Scotch broom and other, and even people planting species that are, I know some people are aware, and the nurseries have been doing a good job in avoiding, I think, invasive species, but I also see many people that have no clue of. So I was just wondering if it's invasive species by law will be sooner, it will be kind of short term.
Natural asset technician.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think I can speak to the invasive species bylaw because that would be the bylaw department or somebody bringing that forward. I would say that implementation of any of the actions within the plan is something that we would be bringing forward and for council to consider, you know, prioritization of some of the actions and timeline. So I would defer that until the next time we meet to discuss that.
Okay.
Okay, Director of Infrastructure.
Thanks. Just through the mayor, as far as I'm aware, in my time since I've been here, there's been no direction from council to staff to bring forward a invasive species bylaw. So it's not something that necessarily would be coming from staff, but if there's a recommendation from council for us to do so, that's something that we would be able to look back. I don't know if there's a resolution from years prior that's still potentially on the books. That's something that we could look into. But if there's a strong desire for that to be a thing that is brought forward, I mean, certainly that's just direction that can come from council to staff.
Yeah, I don't think it's in our strategic plan. It's something maybe for the next one. Corporate Officer? Yeah.
Through you, Mayor. In about 2020, there was a draft bylaw brought forward by the bylaw enforcement officer. It went to what was then known as the Planning and Development Committee. The committee recommended 3 readings. Council referred it back to the committee seeking further information. It was focused around knotweed, and it didn't go any further. That was as far as it went. It never did receive any readings.
Okay. Director of Finance.
Yes, Mayor White, I just wanted to remind everyone that at the 2025 budget dialogue session, action on invasive species was one of the bigger topics that was recorded. So the town does have a budget of approximately $10,000 a year for it, but I'm not sure myself.
I think we do a really great job on invasive species on our own land, like especially when I look at other municipalities. And I mean, a lot of people that come to the budget dialogues, they're from outside of town sometimes, and they're bringing up concerns about, when we kind of dive deeper into them, it turns out they're talking about, somebody kept bringing up Pratt Road, for example. But I just know from relative experience, when I was on council before, I mean, we're going back 10 years or so, there were a lot of invasive species problems on public land and through our Parks Department at the time, and I think continuing work from Michelle and others, Parks Department of present too. I think we're doing a great job. Councillor D'Andrade, and I know you're talking about private land.
Exactly. And
Yeah. But I just wanted to address the concerns that came up at the budget dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the town is doing, already doing, even if it's not a formal program, they do remove invasive species. I'm talking about private land, good example is North Road. You go there, there's some lots that are yellow right now gold yellow, and it's all full of Scotch broom. And I think it's part of education as well, right? Because people don't know. People do plant invasive species. I mean, English holly is one example. English ivy, it's all over the trees, right? So I think, Mayor, I understand that staff mentioned that council has not recommended, but my understanding, this is part of recommendations as a whole, because if you need, they talk several times the impact of invasive species in the plan. So I would like just, as part of the recommendations, this is part of the discussion about having a invasive species bylaw and the heritage, because how can we enforce heritage tree if we don't have a heritage designation, right?
Councillor Lumley.
I wrote invasive species bylaw. Yeah, it says if you have invasive species on or near your property, please remove it immediately. I mean,
Okay, I guess maybe it's not a hard thing to do then.
Well,
It doesn't need to wait for a couple of years.
But it's hilarious. It's like, and through the mayor, I'm not trying to be, but it's another example of like, you know, more government bylaws and regulations when, you know, maybe, you know, like education or maybe some sort of programs would work instead of having more bureaucracy around like invasive species. Like we just removed all the blackberries beside Smitty's. They're all gone now because we removed them because they were taking over. But they're not because of a bylaw, only because we wanted to. And it's like, it looks way better there. And I don't know, I mean, sometimes you know, I mean, I guess you can't force everybody to improve the property or to be cognizant of it, but maybe some sort of education around it might work as much as like a bylaw that might never get put in. You know what I mean? It's just another bylaw in the book. It's like the smoking bylaw, right? I mean, how many smoking tickets have we given out for people smoking on public land? So it kind of gets overbearing with all these bylaws, but.
Well, yeah, I doubt many people willfully want invasive species to be taking over their land or wanting to risk that. But probably it is an education issue of being able to identify them before it gets to be a problem. That's with the exception of some vacant lots, for sure. I mean, I think unfortunately, there are vacant lots where people do just let it get out of control and don't care. Natural assets technician.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the reasons why the invasive species bylaw, I believe, didn't go through, actually, I won't speak to that. I'd say why it wouldn't work right now is that if you're identifying what species are invasive, then knotweed is one of them, and knotweed disposal is not something that we can handle in the town of Gibsons. So you either need deep burial or you need to burn it. And you can't transport it across jurisdictional lines. Like there's a facility down in the Lower Mainland that can accept knotweed disposal, but we can't take it on the ferry. We can't drive it across boundaries. So staff are working with the Wildfire Committee with it, which is SERD and Fire Smart and the Sunshine Coast Community Forest to look at, and District of Seashelt, to look at the potential of purchasing an incinerator that's like a biochar producer to be able to deal with knotweed so that we could actually have a disposal site for folks. So I think it's, you know, having a bylaw to say to remove blackberries is a lot different than a bylaw to remove knotweed. And so I don't think that we could just ignore knotweed in the definition of invasives.
Okay, other questions on the report that's come forward? Our urban forest plan? Oh, that's where I think we asked a lot of questions, so we are ready for the recommendation. And the recommendation has the condition that the urban forest plan be endorsed with the condition that staff be directed to prepare an implementation plan for the recommendations outlined in the plan. And I think that's kind of some of the questions we've been asking will probably help direct that implementation plan. So I see a motion by or Councillor DeAndrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. Any discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor? The motion carries to endorse. So thank you again, Matt, for all your work and your whole team at Diamond Head who helped get this to this point. And thanks also for joining us today. And finally, we have council reports on the agenda. This was the last item to be added to our agenda, partly because I just came back from FCM and wanted to report on that to everybody, and was struggling through jet lag and other things, and I still have jet lag for sure. But hopefully there aren't too many typos in the report. And then thank you for your reports, Councillor DeAndrade and Councillor Kroll as well, and Melissa gave us a nice kind of year end of how things are going at the school. And yeah, also she sent her regrets because capstone presentations are happening like right now in 10 minutes. I think they start. So everyone's welcome to head up to it's not, there aren't, it's kind of, I understand you can just kind of walk around the gym and see the different projects. So we're all welcome that we've all been invited to come and check it out, and you can just drop in and check out the projects at any time in the next couple hours, I think. Is it 5 to 7? Yeah. Okay, thanks, Louise, for confirming that. I also wanted to mention about Melissa, too, that I mentioned in my report all these media requests that are happening. It must be slow news because when they're coming to us. But we got a request right before I left last week from CKNW about a hot topic, and I couldn't actually respond to it because I was going to be on the plane, and I mean I think maybe I don't know if anyone heard it, but I some might know, but I want everyone else, like, can you guess what the topic was? The hot topic in the town of Gibsons? Yeah, okay. Arcades. Yeah. Like, that's what CKNW wanted to ask us questions about, is arcades. So I thought, well, let's delegate that to our student on council, since I couldn't do the interview anyway. So Melissa did the interview and said it went really well, and we got feedback from CKNW saying that she was great too. And Bronwyn's just kind of been talking to them about getting the recording online so we can listen to it and share it. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. It was great because I believe the radio station did provide Melissa with a list of questions that they wanted her to respond to. And she reached out to me, and we had a phone conversation and went through the agenda and the background to it. And, she was asking questions, and I think she was really well prepared for it. It was, it was good, but it was a great opportunity because
very cool experience.
Yeah, well, and also from the feedback we had at the high school on the OCP, it was one of the things that came up because of student engagement.
Yeah.
So I think it was really great that the student was able to respond to the.
Yeah, and I think it's great it's an opportunity to showcase our program too, because I'm sure when they called up asking to talk to the mayor, they had no idea we actually have a student on council. I'm sure they thought that was probably an even better idea to talk to the student, and I'm sure they enjoyed it. So, Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just a question regarding something you wrote. Matt Salis, we've managed to discuss future opportunities, and I wonder these opportunities is for disposal of invasive species, including?
Yeah, I think that came up a little bit. I mean, maybe not at that specific meeting, but I know it's something Salish is looking at for sure. And it's something that we do bring up with them about invasive species manning. Are you up on that? Yeah.
That's pretty much that streams where we'll take a few folks working together, the SCRD and the opportunity for the contractors, so we can all benefit from that asset, the burning unit. It's the only obvious available option we have, and the problem seems to be much bigger than the solution in some ways. So excited about that. And there's discussions going on about the landfill, and I think it kind of goes with that discussion. So we're hopeful that something can be done. So.
A point Trevor once raised to me about this conversation too is I mean, even if you did have some a separate drop off at Salish to take to the incinerator, which Salish has been talking about, or take to whatever disposal they can manage. There would need to be some education to people about transporting it there in the first place too, because it could invasives can in transport they could possibly distribute all over the side of the highway, which is definitely what we don't want. Any other questions on the reports? And yeah, I'm sorry again that if some haven't had chance to read them all yet, but hopefully can find time. So we are on, the next meeting is July the 8th at 3:30 p.m. The next regular meeting of council. Do we have a cow before then? Yeah, I don't know if there's anything immediately. We do have a slightly, our schedule is easing up a bit after budget. I think where we were on June 17th, there's a committee of the whole, yeah. Yeah, but at least we're not meeting weekly like we were for the last while, I think, so. Oh, did you hear that? Yeah. Are you catching up on sleep yet? Yeah, I hope so. Okay, so motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor DeAndrade. All those in favor? The motion carries. Thanks, everybody.